All right, guys. So we are getting into an awesome episode of the Extra Mile podcast. Stay tuned for something dope that just came back from Cancun. You guys aren't going to want to miss this one.
Your success is on the other side of your comfort zone. See, that's the difference between me and those other guys. I wanted it more than they did. I wanted it enough to get uncomfortable. I wanted it enough to go the extra mile. Do you want it bad enough? Do you want it bad enough to go the extra mile?
Hey, all right, we are in here, guys, and we are rocking with this guy here. Let's go with Sean Coe. We've got a cool episode coming up because the thing is, what I love about these podcast episodes where I haven't got to meet the guests before, we get to have a really organic conversation. Now, I've met this gentleman, right? But we haven't been able to dive deep. So we're going to be diving deep today on camera for you guys. What do you think about that, Sean?
That sounds great. But we have dove deep before. We jumped off those cliffs in Mexico together.
Yeah, that's like literally diving deep. Like, right? I mean, it was jumping. I dove through the cliff, the one with the hole.
Right.
I dove through that joke.
Absolutely.
You know why? Because I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to control the jump very well, right? Like if I jumped feet first, I thought I might like hit one of these rocks. But if I dove like head first, I was going to be able to control the jump and make sure I got between those two sides.
But didn't you still go feet first?
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah, I dove
right.
first.
See, I found the cave where you couldn't see what was down there easier to jump into than when I saw the expanse of the other one.
Oh man, it's all about the perspective, isn't it,
is all
man?
about
Because I tell you,
perspective.
when I looked up at the platform, the 52-foot jump, I was like, I can do this. And I got up there, I was like, I cannot do this. You know what I mean?
But you did it.
I know. But man, I'll tell you, there was some fear I had to overcome. All right, guys, we'll explain all that in just a few minutes, guys. But listen, Sean, I want you to introduce yourself to the wonderful people listening. Tell them who you are, where you came from, what your story is a little bit, and then we're going to dive deep into some shit. I'm going to stop you as you go. Okay. If there's stuff that we want to drop for these people that are listening, I'll stop you and we'll dive a little bit deeper into each thing.
Well, also, my friend, it's just great to be here. First of all, who I am, my name's Sean Coe. I live in Los Angeles. I am connected here because of the great Unleash You Now mastermind and our team and the events we put on. So that's pretty cool. Yep, we got a hat back here. And so that's how I actually met you. That's how we first met, was at an Unleash You Now event. My story is I basically came from nothing. You know, I grew up really poor, grew up on the farm, 130 acres. And so I was a farm boy, up at 4:30 in the morning, milking cows, pitching hay,
And where was that?
In Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but I always realized I had a different mindset than my family. Like my dad and my mom are wonderful, tremendous people, but they're a product of where they were raised, right? And they were a product of the conditioning that they had. Mm-hmm. But something in me was different. And so I never felt really understood growing up. And my parents always loved me and they were really proud of me. But emotionally, I was a really emotional child. And what I didn't realize until a time ago was that my voice just wasn't being heard. And so I was seeking to be understood in a way that my parents couldn't understand me. And so it left all this hardship and all these difficulties and I liken it to like when we were in Mexico, I was walking on the beach and I noticed this guy named Mario and he was raking the seaweed up to take it away. And every morning the seaweed would just come in and it's more seaweed than I'd ever seen in my life.
It was a lot of seaweed.
It was a lot of seaweed. But I kept thinking, like, as I'm watching him do this, like he's providing for his family, like he's doing work, like he's chewing dirt, right?
Right.
But he's maybe 100 feet away from these amazing resorts that maybe he never has access to in his life. And so I liken that to my life a lot, where most of my life felt like I was trying to get access to something just beyond my reach. And I was doing all the right things. I was being the right person. I was going to church. I was, like doing all of it, right? And I just couldn't grasp what was just beyond my reach. But I knew there was more there. And so like that's kind of the origin story, right? The beginning of, and I had to figure out, because I knew I wasn't going to get that from my parents. Like they didn't know how to reach something that they didn't have access to. And so I had to try to figure that out for myself.
Now, you said that you were doing the right thing. Now, in hindsight, looking back on that, do you feel like you were doing the normal thing more than the right thing?
Well, it was the right thing for that existence.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have to realize that there are different right things based on our perspective and based on what we want, right? Like I was doing the wrong things for what I knew I wanted, even though that's what I was conditioned to do.
Right. It just seemed so normal at the time, right?
Well, it's what everybody's doing.
Grind.
Well, I remember there was a time I made a bad financial decision one time, and I was probably like 20 years old or something like that, and I owed like $4,000. And I was like, who do I go ask to for advice? Like I normally would ask my dad, or I'd ask my best friend or one of my coaches or teachers. And I had to ask myself, and like, this is not a shot on their life at all, but I had to ask myself, do I want their life? Mm-hmm. And when I looked around, there was nobody in my life that I wanted their life. And so I was like, oh, I have a problem. Because if I'm seeking advice from somebody who I don't want the results of what their choices have led to, then I need to find different people to be around me. Like I need to find different people to ask advice. And I love my parents. I love my best friend. I love everybody from my life. And it's okay. We all want what we want, right?
Do you remember like what moment that was that you realized like you just wanted something totally different than what you had seen from them? And were there any other influences in your life that was doing anything different? Like some kind of a role model, uncle, cousin, anything like that, that was just breaking the mold completely to kind of open your eyes to it?
There probably wasn't anyone breaking the mold completely. I think it's just like, sometimes you just feel things in your soul, right? Like, like I always just knew I was made for more. I always knew like my dad was a work a 40-hour-a-week job, be with your family as much as possible. And so I took some things from him, like be with your family as much as possible.
Right.
But I, and I would try to work these jobs, and I went to school and I did like all of the quote unquote right things, right? And it just never fulfilled me. So I think that knowing there was something more possible, like something inside of me kept whispering to me the whole time I was growing up, and, going to work a job, and then at the end of the month, I was like, shit, this is all I got left over. Like, what am I going to do for my kids? What am I going to do for my daughters? Like, how do I help them elevate past what I have? Like, all of us as parents want our kids to exceed us. And I couldn't figure out how to do that living the life that I was living.
So, okay. So did your parents have expectations for you to stay in the farm and kind of do that as a career, or did they allow you to spread your wings, so to say, and like kind of explore?
My dad always had this saying that you don't have to do anything to make me proud of you. And so like there was no restrictions. And it was more my grandparents that would pull us towards the farm. My parents were like the first generation to kind of break away. So they did set the mold a little bit. Because my dad was a teacher and my mom went through a variation of careers and ended up being a principal. And so in the public education system.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so they kind of set a little bit of that pivot for me, but there was nobody that was really like what I'd say like crushing it in life or, living this abundantly fulfilled life. Everybody felt like they were like just like clawing up a hill, like forcing any kind of success possible. And then look up at your bank account at the end of the month when all the bills are due and like...
There's barely enough to survive.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like when I was growing up, my mom had to make my clothes, and so like it was fun to go to the clothing store to pick out a pattern. No, I wasn't Amish. Come on, man.
I mean, you're saying she's making your clothes. You guys grew up on a farm. I'm just connecting the dots over here.
Right there. There's lots more dots to connect. So.
All right. Let me ask you this, though, bro. It's funny because I was watching like a Gary Vee clip the other day, and he was like, he's like, maybe I'm an asshole, right? Because I'm so competitive that I don't want to see my kids beat me.
Okay.
Like he's like, I don't want to see my kids beat me. Do I want to see them do good? Yeah, I want to see them do good, but I don't want to see my kids beat me. And maybe I'm wrong for that. Maybe I'm an asshole for that. I was like, yo, this dude is competitive as fuck. But it is interesting how like, there are people, and maybe you can give some advice here to people that are out there and their parents have either like set that expectation for them to take over the family business, or, you got to make dad proud. I was a basketball player. You must be. I was, whatever. You got to take on the family business eventually. You got to have the legacy go on. The people that are like running or coming behind that and want their own thing.
Right.
What advice would you give them?
What I would say is you're going to come to that tension point at some point in time. So if you can build on purpose to that tension point as opposed to it smacking you in the face, like if they're truly not going to be fulfilled running dad's business or living the family legacy, eventually that's going to be a problem, right? It's either going to be an internal tension point problem or it's going to be an external one. Mm-hmm. And so if you have the right coaches, the right people around you, the right mindset, we can actually build it to that tension on purpose in the right way. And then at that point in time, we can actually navigate the relationship more effectively, right? Because there's a way to navigate that without burning the bridge of the relationship or the business. Yeah. The other thing you can look at is like, so when I look at a decision, I'm like, okay, there's multiple ways you can get paid. You can get paid financially, right? Mm-hmm. But you can also get paid in collaboration or skills. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm running dad's business, there's a lot I can learn to prepare me for my thing. I just got to do it strategically and on purpose.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, dude, because like you guys heard my story of when I like worked at Walmart. And while I worked at Walmart, dude, I took all the training they gave me. I was not happy there. It's not what I wanted to do. Right. But man, I'll tell you what, I was going to get everything from it I could. And looking back, like obviously I cashed my check every week, so the money mattered.
Right.
But what I really gained from that was like the lessons that was taught, the training that I learned and stuff like that. Some shit not to do, some shit to do, right?
For sure. Well, some of the most successful people will say like you work to learn, then you work to earn.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so you kind of alluded to this time when you were 20 years old and you made a poor investment. But where does your life kind of play out from, you know, growing up the way that you did? You're coming to an adulthood. Where's your vision come in? Let's take us back there and then walk us through that climb a little bit.
For sure. So, I mean, even when I had that epiphany of like, I needed better people to ask advice, I still didn't know how to find those people. Obviously that created another problem. So then I went to college, right? And I was studying and, you know, like I always knew I was good talking to people. And I was, like I said, I was a very emotional kid. And so like mental health therapy kind of became a natural transition for me. Like I had tried a couple different majors, but I was like, oh, I want to make a difference in the world. Like I want to work with people. I want to, you know, make the world a better place. And so I got my degree, you know, master's of social work. And and so then I started working with people. Like I got my bachelor's and I worked with like a family reunification program, and I actually got laid off from the same program twice. And I'm like, I probably should make a different decision. So then I went into my master's program, and at that point in time, I had already had my first daughter. And so I was like, my life at that point in time was crazy. Like I've got a young kid. We were on all kinds of support.
How old were you at that time?
I think I was 24 when Kaylee was born.
Okay.
And so I was in my master's program. And so the pivot to the master's program was I got laid off from the same job trying to help people twice. Mm-hmm. Like somebody with seniority took my job, and I'm like, right, what am I doing?
Right, exactly.
Right? Like I was probably making $22,000 a year with a bachelor's degree. Oh, like for sure, I was so good. And then I was like, oh, I got to go back and get my master's degree. I got to at least make more. Now the funny part is I got out of my master's degree and had a job that made $23,000 the first year out of that. So it didn't initially work out. No. But we were on women and infant children. We were getting butter and milk and everything from the government. Like we were barely surviving, right?
Gotcha.
And I would go to school all day long, and then I was sorting shift levers at a car factory, where, you know, like the shift levers on a Lexus, I was looking at all of those to make sure there was no dents in that. It was super fun. Shit. Yeah, it was super fun. So I'd do that and then go to school.
So when you were with the family reunification program, was that like foster children getting reunited with?
Yeah, anything foster, or like before they fully got in foster care, like we'd work with the families and try to reunite them. We would try to help the kids get some socialization and skills so that they can reunite was the initial goal. So.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, I'm going to pick your brain later, because we got reunified with our parents, and when we did, shit was worse then than it was when they took us in the first place. Like we didn't even have electric at our house when they put us back with our parents.
You're like, how does this make any sense?
We had an extension cord ran over from the neighbor's house running our fridge and our TV, right? Mm-hmm. Priorities. And neither one of my parents had a car, license, jobs. I have no idea why we went back. I think they were just like, you know what, we've tried. We gave it our best, guys.
Well, I think it was the system's too full. Like you look at the reason behind decisions, it's not always great.
But this isn't about me, it's about you. So let's go back to, all right, so you're doing the master's program, you make a shift. You're making $1,000 more with this new job, but
after spending all that money for that master's degree,
and you're getting support from the state to help with Kaylee, and
correct,
been there, man, and I know how that feels. It's not a prideful moment for sure, but you know we got to survive,
right?
So where do you take us from there? You, Kaylee, and your
ex-wife Amanda at that point. Well, she's currently my ex-wife. She wasn't then. So from there, it was like, okay, so I got my master's degree, right? Like I'm not going to work in this family reunification program anymore. There was two, one before and one after, and I was driving like 300 miles a day to go into families' homes. And so I got lucky enough to get a job as a clinical director of a residential treatment facility for psychiatric juvenile boys. And so it'd be like, think of all the worst crimes you can think of, and like, they were minors when they committed it, and so they were in this facility. And luckily, you know, it was good talking to people.
Is this still in Michigan?
It's still in Michigan. Okay. Yeah, I haven't even got to California
yet.
I know.
So. That's why I'm just trying to track the timeline, baby, and where you're going.
Right.
So, all right, cool.
But we got into this, and so I was eating lunch every day with people who'd committed murder or, you know, rape or, you know, major sexual assaults. And it was just this interesting world of how the brain works, right? And so what I didn't know is that this really started to spark my fascination with brain development and neurological functioning and neuroplasticity and things like that. And because I'm sitting there every day beating my head into the wall trying to figure out, how do I help this guy who stabbed this guy 17 times to get back into society? How do I speak a language that he can understand? You know, I'm a white kid from nowhere, Michigan, and I'm working with these kids, and I'm like, I got to make a difference. I got to help, and I got to support my family at the same time.
Yeah,
it was interesting.
How did it go? Do you have like contact with any of the people that you worked with back then to see where their progress has been or anything like that?
Yeah, so I still talk with the people I used to work with. One one of the biggest success stories, that kid who committed murder, like I'm still connected with him,
that's
and
good
you know
shit,
we're
man.
still friends. And so it was interesting. Like we used to play chess all the time, and that was our connection. You know, because you find a way to play chess, right? And the strategy of chess. And one of my sayings is like, are we going to play checkers in life, or are we going to play chess, right?
Right.
You know, if somebody's going to play checkers, they give you a move, you make the move, but otherwise we have strategy. Like now the key is we want to play chess even if when they think we're playing checkers, right?
Right.
But yeah, like, so he's doing great. Like we got him through that program. We got him to go to college, get a degree. He's married. He has a great life now.
So you making those changes for those people back then, do you think that plays into what you're doing today? I mean, this was the starting point for what you're doing today with people and helping them like realize their potential.
I think that everything plays, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Like one of my mentors talks about, like when you're on your journey, you never know what you're going to need for the next point in the journey. So every place you go, you want to gather up everything you can. You want to learn, like you always say, you can learn from everybody in the room.
Absolutely.
You want to learn as much as you can and gather up what you can, because you don't know when you're going to need it. But the problem is if something I'm going to learn from you today, I need 5 years from now, and I don't learn it today, it might take me 5 years to learn it in 5 years.
Ain't that some
and then I'm
shit?
behind.
Yeah.
And so like I would just, like my whole life has been gathering bits and pieces from everybody I spend time with and then applying it.
Yeah.
Right?
I might not need this now, but let me log this. I'm
For
gonna,
sure.
Yeah. I gotta
Well,
log
and
this
the
information.
challenge is we don't even know if or when we'll need it. So we just got to gather everything we can.
Yeah.
And we can't miss a moment. Like AJ and I were on the way over here saying like everything matters. Everything matters.
Man, it's so funny you say that, because when I do sales training, I talk about the presentation and I say nothing is neutral.
Right.
Like nothing is neutral. Everything you do or say during that presentation is either going to work towards the close, right, or towards the sale, or against it.
Right.
It ain't nothing that you're going to say or do that's just neutral and doesn't matter. So so that's right. I mean, like the same thing is in life. Like if we care enough, then nothing should be neutral. Something should be either moving us towards our goal or knowing damn well it's moving away from our goal.
Right. And what I found with that is being fully present in the moments is really key, right? Like if I'm here and thinking about something else, I'm going to miss something.
Right.
So I've got to be fully invested in every moment I'm in, no matter what that is, whether that's a sales call, whether that's an interview, whether that's parenting my kids.
How do you do that?
Just practice, right? So what I did is I worked on training my mind to be in the moment. And you can do it. Like we could take like this bottle of water that's right in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Like if both of us took a minute and only focused on drinking that bottle of water, what it felt like in our hand, what it was like when it hit our lips and our tongue, like all of it, we train our brain, right? You know, because, you know, the reticular activating system, right? We heard about this weekend. Mm-hmm. Whatever we make important to our brain, it's going to go find evidence for. It's going to go look for more evidence of that. So we can actually train our brain to do what we want it to do.
So it's not necessarily, hey, all right, take whatever stress and worries you have and set them aside. It's let's just give all of our energy right now to the moment and what is important in the moment. So it's not necessarily like, hey, let me get this out of my mind. It's let me give this all of my mind.
It is, yeah. And you mentioned feelings and stress, right? Like there's two ways to look at that. Like, so our stress shows up, we can say, hey, let's dive in and let's fix it. But I look at it as an indicator of what to do next. When any emotion that I feel shows up that I don't like, it's just go get aligned. It's go be present. Go do the next right thing towards the clarity that I've built so that we're making sure we're moving in the right direction. Because I have a saying that's like, if you and I go scuba diving and we run out of air, which direction do we swim?
I would swim up, but I'm probably wrong.
No, you would swim up.
So
but
okay. There's like, is this a trick question?
It's a trick
question.
question,
Because, you know,
right?
AJ's in the room. There's always fucking trick questions. You
For
know what I
sure,
mean?
right? It's
So-
perspective, right?
Yeah.
Right? But how many people will look at their stress or anxiety or depression or whatever and say, oh, if I just swim deeper into it, I'll find
shit.
air at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, man. That's ugly. Yeah, that's
Well,
scary.
but it's and it's even like what people are taught to do sometimes. Like, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't heal from our past or we shouldn't examine it, but
Right.
sometimes we need to come up for air.
Right, like, yeah, I did something, it didn't work out, I suck, let me go sit on the couch and fucking, you know, eat something and, you know, instead of like trying again or taking it on
Right.
again. Now, let me go back. I hate to backtrack a little bit, but you were talking about the guy who stabbed somebody 17 times. You know my story, but for the people that are listening, right, like, is there something specific that you would say to somebody who's had that kind of a strike against them and is working to build a new life, it might even be in the same area. Mike and I have talked about that a few times, but what advice would you give somebody who's got some strikes against them that are trying to build a new life and do things right?
Well, I would say, first I'd probably say, like, you're in a shit situation, right? Like, this is not good, right? But hating yourself for it doesn't change it. Wishing it wasn't that way doesn't change it, right? So we have to be able to pivot the mindset forward so that we can go towards something. And I think I see a lot of people get stuck in situations, much less hard situations than that. One of the things that he was able to do is he was able to accept it and then start to say, okay, if this is my hand in life, what can I do with it, right? Like I can't change where I'm at right now. So the self-hatred stuff doesn't work, but what can I do with it? Is it going to limit me on somehow? Yeah. I mean, like if somebody gets in an accident and they break their legs, that's going to limit themselves, but it doesn't remove all possibility. So we have to get to the point of acceptance and being able to move the perspective forward so we can say, what is still possible? Now, we live in a world where you can make $1 million a million different ways, right? So there, no matter what the limitation, there isn't really a limitation other than your mind.
Right. Yeah, that's so true.
Right.
That's so true. All right, Sean, take us back to where we left off in the story. Where are we going from there? How do we get to California? What's the journey there from Michigan, helping these people,
Right.
doing what you're doing there? Where do you go from there?
So my ex-wife grew up in California, and so she had always wanted to move back here, and I was always like, let me just get things dialed in here, and then we'll look at it. There was actually an illness in her family that we ended up moving back here for. And then I don't know how deep you want me to go into the story.
Hey, man, go as deep as you want to go. We
All right,
got some time here.
All right. So we got back here, and shortly after we got back, we ended up separating and getting a divorce. So we got to California. Well, I say here like we're in California. We're
It's
in
all
Delaware
good. I know
right
what
now.
you meant.
So, and we moved back into her hometown where she grew up. And then shortly after that, we split, and I stayed for my children, and because my queens, man, like I wasn't gonna leave them. So.
Yeah. So what was that like? Trying to build in a new area.
Well, I mean, it's
because that was the first time you really left home, right? Like
it was the first. I mean, I'd done some traveling, but it's the first time I lived someplace other than that. I mean, honestly, it was one of the hardest things I could ever do. Like I was crushed, right? Like I was like the woman that I moved to California for to support her and her family is no longer an anchor point in my life. The only reason I'm staying is my girls, and they were 4 and 1 at this time. And I'm like, oh, I got to be a dad. I got to make money. I got to support them. This woman and I are no longer together. I won't go into the depth of that story. And I'm like, everything in me wanted to run back home. Everything in me wanted to run back, but I knew I couldn't because my kids were here.
Yeah.
Right.
And based on a lot of the shit we've already said right now, right? Like,
right.
Can't run home now. We just talked about like when you get in those feelings, you can't go and hide. You can't, you kind of got to move forward. You got to lean into it.
Well, so I had to do a lot of self-evaluation to say so it's probably, I would say probably the gift of that moment is it was the first time in my life where I probably said, what do I truly want? Instead of just following the, hey, you get a job, you get to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. I'm like, oh, what do I want, right? And I was in a land of California that had more opportunity than Michigan had, which now I can see as a huge blessing.
Yeah.
But all I knew was mental health.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, I got to make some scratch, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a job running a methadone clinic.
No way.
Yeah, for sure. So I was sleeping on the couch. I'd leave the house at 3 a.m., drive and get to a clinic to open it up at 5 a.m. to serve methadone to heroin and opiate addicts. Yeah, it was crazy.
This is wild, bro. Like
it's a story, huh?
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that. But everybody's got, that's the thing, man. Everybody's got their own journey. So, so all right. So I was gonna ask that, right? Like, how did you get your career started when you got back out there? Now, so what triggers your move from that though? Like, what prompts your move from you doing that? Working in the methadone clinics, and I know that obviously you're exposed to so much shit, but really, like, it is a treatment process. It is a way to get people off of something that's much
theoretically
worse.
it is a treatment process, right?
Yeah,
like it's got to be
right.
done well, right? Like I saw a lot of good and a lot of not so good there. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've been exposed to quite a bit of it myself, so so I'm sure.
Yeah, but this isn't a commentary on methadone treatment.
No. So what's the next step though? Like, tell me what takes you from there. What moves you from that on?
So the next step was I knew that wasn't aligned with what I was doing, and I basically became like, how do I get these addicts to pay for the treatment so that I can give them the treatment to get them help? And it just didn't fit with my worldview.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I went back to family reunification. I got another job. And working family reunification, same kind of thing I was doing in Michigan. And one of my mentors was like, hey, you should check out dialysis, right? Like you should check out working in a corporate structure of dialysis. I was like, oh, cool. Like I made he introduced me to a couple people, and I'm like, oh, here's an extra job. I was going to be 4 to 10 hours a week to make a little extra scratch, right?
How old are you at this point?
So I am probably 28, 29 years old at this point in time. Okay. And then the minute I started working 4 hours a week at this dialysis job, I lost my family preservation job. They came in and were like, yeah, we're going to let you go before your probation is up. And so I went from having a job to trying to support 2 kids on 4 hours a week.
Dang.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, man. It is interesting, man. Like when you have kids, I know Mike talks about this a lot, but when you have kids, man, your whole life does change, like your priorities. Now, did you have them full time, or did you have?
I had
like,
him.
you guys,
I had him. It was a flexible one. My ex-wife was going through some shit at that point in time, so I had him a little bit more. But at this point in time, I didn't even have a place. Like I was renting rooms, and so you look back on things and you have gratitude for what they were. But like, so one of the most special parts of this time was like, so my girls and I had to share a bedroom, right? Mm-hmm. And so they would flip flop which night they'd sleep in the bed with me versus when they sleep in the other bed, because I had 2 beds in the room,
right?
And they fought like cats and dogs, so they couldn't sleep together. And so we'd rotate nights. But now looking back, like the intimacy intimacy is going to be misinterpreted that way, like not in a bad way, but just the closeness and connection to my daughters. Like
I have 2 girls myself, man, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
I still love to cuddle them. Yeah. They're 17 and 14 now. Yep. Like they can't get away.
Yeah.
Right?
My daughter woke up for school this morning and she was like, of course she don't want to be up. She wants to be sleeping. I was like, come here, girl. And she comes in, cuddles. I'm laying on the couch with her for a few minutes and we're getting everything, she's getting ready for school or whatever, but she's going to be 17 in August. So
that's crazy. I got a 17-year-old too.
Yeah. So, but let me ask you this, man. This is something that I struggle with, right? And I've seen it so many times. You talked about how you had this drive and this interest in you already before you had children. Like you knew, like as you were working on the farm with your parents and all this stuff, like you had something bigger planned or felt like there was something bigger for you. How did your kids impact that? And did it change your why? Did your why already exist? Like how big of a role did your kids play in your pursuit of something better for you?
Well, I mean, I think they're the reason, right? Okay. Like whatever I had before, they magnified times 1,000,000, right? Like, and so there's days where I'm like, man, I don't really want to finish the day strong. And I think about their faces, right? Because I'm not just building impact for the world. I'm not just building a life for me. I'm building a legacy that they can build off from, right? I always think about a mountain where it's like successful people want their kids to start from the mountaintop they finished on. So I want to build that mountaintop as fucking high as I possibly can and give them all the skills possible so they can start from a really high mountaintop. Mm-hmm. So they're everything. Like they're the only drive, right? At the core of everything. And so everything that I say to them, everything I do, everything I put out into the world, like I want them to be proud and I want them to build off from it. Mm. And so the questions I ask them, what I say when I'm in their room, the books I sit down and read in front of them to influence them, it's all to unlock their potential too. So yeah, I mean, the why, it was probably there, but they magnified every good aspect of who I was as a human being.
All right, so I'm going to say something a little controversial here because I struggle with this, right? Like I see like these single moms and telling me that, they do everything for their kid and that, this is what's moving them forward. Now, in your situation, it may be a little bit different, but we're going to see because for me, right, like what happens when they're grown adults with their own families and have their attention elsewhere and this effort that you put in for years, making them the priority or them being the fuel for you. And this isn't me directly at you. This is me directly at the idea. What happens then? What happens when they have their own lives and, they're no longer like in your face every single day reminding you of what's required?
Right. Well, I guarantee it's going to be a challenge for me. Now, I think there's a difference with them being the fuel and the what I'm aiming for, or am I modeling for them, right? Like if I model for them success with them as a fuel reason for that, it's a little bit different, right? Because I know that inevitably they're going to not be there, right? But then the goal is I want to have several beach houses that I can invite them to, you know what I mean? Because I want to invite them back. I always want that relationship. And what I'm thinking is, I've built the foundation of that relationship that will last forever. So I don't have to chase, per se, them anymore. And we know each other well enough that we both have huge impact missions that we're working on that's bigger than the kids, even if we're modeling it to the kids and they're part of our fuel for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's just, man, it's one of those things where I've seen this happen firsthand, by the way. I literally watched my aunt, like, who was like super mom. Like this girl just did it all. Like she made all the Halloween costumes. She like did it all, right? And her kids, she had all boys except for one girl, right? So the boys are a little bit more inclined to step further away once they become an adult because the woman's like, come on over here, your Thanksgiving dinner now with my family, Christmas dinner with my family. At least that's what I see, my observation anyway. Yeah. But, I watched this lady, this woman, my aunt, just like not really have much purpose anymore. Right. Like she was the best mom. Like I watched her be a super mom.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like she just didn't have that anymore. And it was hard. I watched it be hard for her. So that's what I struggle with. These people are like, the kids are the only thing that matters to me. Like, and I don't think that's what you're saying here. I think it was just amplifying something for you. But when I have these conversations, it drives me crazy because I watch these people that are like, I do it all for my kid. I do it all for my kid. Well, what happens when your kid grows up and like takes off?
Doesn't need you the same way. Yeah.
Right. Like I can tell you, like I've seen some rebellious ass kids get older, take off, and not talk to mom for 10 years.
Right.
Like, how are you going to sit with that? What's going to get you out of bed then? And I'm not wishing that on anybody, but at the end of the day, that's why I believe so much in like the self-awareness and like the want of ourselves, right? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a little too selfish in that, but for me, like, I'm like, okay, I got to do this for me because at the end of the day, I'm the only person that I got guaranteed from the beginning to the end.
Of course.
Right.
And I think you make a great point. Like, and I think it's okay to do things for you. Like, I don't think that that's a selfish thing. And you're modeling for your children how to be successful. I don't think selfish
is a bad thing.
Well, I don't either. Well, I just say the normal version of selfishness. Yes. Like there is a healthy selfishness, which I think that both you and I are pursuing.
Yes.
Because whatever I do is going to impact everyone around me. It's that ripple effect on the world. And I think that we owe a debt of impact to the whole world, not just our children. So I love what you're saying about it. It can be and probably should be more than them, but I think that they're the easiest emotional drive to connect to. Now, what I would say is like, you need systems and things in place to magnify and amplify that aren't your children too.
Yeah.
So that the emotional momentum is there, the vision is there, the clarity is there. Like, and I think we should always be pursuing clarity on our why. I got a saying that's like, if you think you're clear, you're crazy. You should push further, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I love what you're saying about the kids are uber important, but it's okay that there's more than the kids.
Right. And then, so the one last, and we'll move on from this. The one last piece to this is, and this was an observation I seen with like coaches and athletes that are like father son, mother daughter, father daughter, whatever, right? And they're not listening to coach as much as the other athletes are. Right. Because coach is also pops. Right. And so like the message and the advice has been watered down because, this person's hearing it constantly.
Right.
So like I'm at a point with my girls that like I don't want to say I'm pulling back, but I'm pulling back a little bit on me hitting them with the advice all the time and letting other people give them the advice, right? So that they get it from different vehicles. And again, please understand me, I am no expert.
Well, none of us are
experts.
You know
what I mean? Like, I don't know if I've got this figured out or not, but I will say that like, there comes a point where I notice like, the advice, you got to pick and choose like where you're going to really lean in and be like, hey, listen, this is a teaching moment and I need to lean in on this. And then there's times where it's like, okay, she made a mistake, but I'm not going to go all the way in on my coaching shit or my advice. You know what I mean? Because like when you're in this personal development space and you're learning all the time, all the stuff that we know that's going to correct the behaviors, like that's where we want to go because like you got this information and you're like, I don't want to keep it from them. It's like letting them walk around with ketchup or mustard on their face. You know what I mean? Like I want to tell you, but I can't always spit it at them. I can't always feed it to them.
Well, one of the ways to bridge that gap too is you can coach from questions too. And the beautiful part about a question is the minute you ask them a question, it forces their brain to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
If you're telling them what to do, they're dependent on you for that.
Yeah.
But the minute we ask a question, it forces the neurons to scramble and regroup. So they're creating new synapses and connections in their brain. And so they're then part of the solution just by you asking a question, even if you said the same thing as you would in a statement.
I like that. That's some fire. Yeah. That's some fire right there. All right, let's move on from this, man. All right. So how did you get into, like, obviously we all have a long journey into what we're doing today. How did you get into what you're doing today? Like what was, and I want like the breakthrough moment. Like what was that for you? Like what was it that really made you launch into what you're doing today?
For sure. Yeah. Like I had a very successful therapy practice and I was working with people one-on-one. I was running groups and different things like that. But through my development, I became a forward-focused person.
Okay.
And so I started seeing, like, how do we build? How do we get strategy? How do we win on purpose, basically? And mental health, wonderful, right? But traditionally is a reversed focused industry where we're like, let's go heal the past. Let's go fix things that are wrong. Like, let's go patch things up. And so I found this deep inner tension in me where I was doing reversed focus work. Again, wonderful, nothing negative about mental health.
Yeah.
And I was a forward focused thinker.
Yeah.
So I kept trying to pull my clients to the forward focus, and I wasn't doing a good job.
Oh, shit.
So I was like, oh, I actively have to shift this because I'm not ethically doing the job that I'm here to do.
Right.
I was still doing good work, but I wasn't doing the level of work that I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
And so I had to be like, okay, what's a pivot of that? Now, there was one other pivot. So many people would come into my office and have money stress. They'd be like, I'm stressed because of this, depressed because of this, I can't pay the bills, all this kind of thing. And I'm like, I can't ethically talk to them about money. I was managing my own money. I had my financial licenses, all that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, if I position myself as a financial coach, an expert in the financial field and the forward focused strategy field, I can actually help all these people way more.
Yeah, and you can get your invoice included in their monthly budget too.
Get my invoice.
I like that.
Yeah, I can help them plan to pay for me, right? Yeah, that's all on purpose. Come on.
No, that's awesome, dude. Like I wouldn't have thought to make that connection between the two, but you're right. And there is so much of a void in just, financial planning, financial, just, I don't even want to say planning, but just like financial knowledge.
Right.
Like people just don't know what to do with it.
If you look at the world, there's really three groups of people. There's the wealthy who have institutionalized education and support, right? Like the wealthy stay wealthy, right? There is the less fortunate who have institutionalized services. And listen, I love living in a country where we take care of less fortunate, right? Like free childcare, free daycare, I love that. But there's a huge group of people in the middle that make too much to have access to the services and don't make enough to have access to the institutional support. And so they have institutional struggle. And we said, they're like, what can we do to help those people, right? Like they deserve somebody in their corner fighting for them too.
Let me ask you this, man. Do you agree? So I started out, when I first started my business, I read the book Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey.
Right.
Dave Ramsey's this financial guy, right?
Yeah, he's good.
All right. What of, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, what of Dave Ramsey's teaching do you not like of financial wise?
There's nothing I would say I don't like of his teaching, right?
Okay. What, if anything, do you teach or do you believe that might be a contradiction?
I don't know if it's a contradiction because we use some of the principles too. I think that there is education and then there's area specific education, right? So you come to California and some of the systems don't work as well because it costs $800,000 to buy a house in California.
Right.
You go to New York or something like that. So I think you need so what we talk about is the 5 stages of wealth building, right? If you walk through these 5 stages, we can get you from where you are to where you want to go on purpose. Now, there's priorities and commitments. There's a lot of things that we have to do on that. But when you start to open up somebody's eyes, you go from, because let's be honest, we all do the best we can, right? Mm-hmm. And it isn't until we know better that we can do better. So we've got to open people's eyes and help them know better, whether it's in the coaching field, whether it's finances, no matter what it is, right? And that's why I love the coaching role, right? It's because you're like, I can coach them up to their potential. And I love that. That's why I love being with guys like in Unleash You Now, in this whole team, not just guys, right? I say guys because I'm from the Midwest, right? But joining with them, we have this incredible mission in the world to create impact from a heart of service, from a heart of give. And it's amazing, right? So people ask me what I do. I'm like, I just talk to amazing people all day long, right? Yeah. And so being with them and working with them is part of that amazing journey. So I love it.
It's hard to send you referrals when you're so vague, though, Sean.
Okay. All right.
I need you to be a little more specific so I can send some people your way. No, okay. You were talking about it the other day, and I wanted to kind of bring this up because I think I have just a little bit of a difference of opinion, right? When it comes to I hear so many people talk about saving 5 months or, saving a certain amount of money that you could pay all your personal bills or all your business bills. And, I don't really buy into that too much, man. I don't like letting money sit and not working for me. And I mean the minute amounts. If it's not grinding for me, if it's not doing something for me, I can't help but take it and put it into something that is.
For sure.
And so, what advice would you give me on that?
Well, you and I are fully aligned with that. I believe your money should be working as hard for you and your success in the life you deserve as you are, right? Okay. So what I would say is, define what success is for each portion of money.
Okay.
There can be, if you have $10,000 in the bank to cover in case the tires on your truck go out, and you don't have to put it on a credit card. Like I get business expense, I get that whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But if we've defined success, then you can feel good about what that money is, right?
Yeah.
And so when people are talking about even spending, I ask them, like, what's the value of the purchase, right? You go buy a really expensive watch because it means something really important to you. There's an incredible value to that. So that cost is worth it. Right. Now you go to Starbucks every 2 days, every day or whatever, and you're not gaining any value from that, then we need to question that purchase.
Right.
So if invested money is a value to you because you want it to grind and grow for you, absolutely. Right. Now we just need a strategy to make sure you're protected, because when we leverage our money in the market, there is market risk. Does that make sense? So we just need portions of strategy that are for the protection, and we need portions of strategy that are for the growth. That's why, like, I love the planning process, because I get to sit down with somebody.
Right.
I get to look at every aspect of their life and make sure once we anchor a plan in, every tactical decision from your life you make is based on that plan. So you can feel great about every financial decision you make, whether it's buy a new car, buy a house, buy a Rolex, whatever it is. You can feel great about it because we planned it on purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Like, and that gets fun because I want people to win on purpose. I want people to feel amazing about their life. And if people realize that if we strategically, financially plan their life on purpose, they can feel amazing about every decision they make.
Yeah.
And we can do it on purpose.
It's crazy, man, because we're living in a world where people are literally going broke, proving to other broke people that they are not broke.
Right.
Like,
and they be broke.
Crazy. They're right. Like it's. Oh man, I could go so deep into this, but so it's funny. Like, I'll have conversations with Heather, and we're like, oh, let's, we want to get a better house or a bigger house or something like that. I'm like, for what? Like, for what? First of all, I do want a place to park my damn cars. I have one car garage right now.
I'm a car guy. You need a 4-car garage.
Yeah, I'm a car guy. I can't have a 1-car garage. It just doesn't work. So, guys, if you're listening, talk to Heather, help me out there. All right. But like, as far as the house goes, like my daughter's 17, going to be 17. My youngest is 12, right? Like, I'm not going to go build a 5-bedroom house. Like, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Because those are going to be bedrooms that are going to sit with storage in it for the next fucking 20 years, right? As our kids, build their lives. And so she's like, but what if they want to come home? I'm like, I got to fucking financially be responsible for what if they come home and like, what? No, I don't want to do that.
Well, I'll tell you,
it's my opinion. My opinion.
Well, we're in the same situation. So what we think about is what's a destination place that we can buy that they'll want to come back to. And even if they don't, we can go enjoy it.
Yeah.
So what's the house on the beach in Malibu? What is the lake house in Tahoe? That's what we're thinking about right now. And that's at the stage we're at, is like, what's the next iteration of success in the life that we want? But like you said, it's got to be about us first, not about the kids, because otherwise you're waiting with an empty room, waiting for your kid to come back home, texting him every 2 days, being like, hey, baby, when you coming home?
Yeah.
Right?
You see these movies and they're like, I haven't even touched your bedroom, honey. Like, what? This man's 40 years old. Why is his stuff still in the bedroom? We should have been renting that out, Airbnb.
Absolutely.
Like, what are we doing here?
Get that money working for you.
Like, I can't help but think of, like, what was it, Ace Ventura? Like, Ray Finkel's bedroom. Did you guys see this movie? You saw this movie, right? Like, he walks in and they're like, holy shit. He's like, we haven't touched it. It's been fucking 20 years. Like, what the world? I don't know. I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be that guy with everything that guy still in the bedroom. Yeah, it's not happening.
For sure.
We're going to rent that out. So, all right. So let's get away from the financial planning, but like, all right, let's talk about like exactly how today, outside of the financial planning, you're really helping people grow in their business, grow in themselves individually as well.
Absolutely. So the other thing I do is like elite high performance coaching, right? Like, so basically, so a lot of people that I work with, they have incredible success, or they have whatever success is for them. And they look up and they're like, man, this doesn't feel like I thought it would, right? Like, I got the money, I got everything like that, but my marriage is struggling, my health is struggling, my finance, like whatever, right? Like my relationship with the kids. So one of the things that I help them do is understand what made them successful in the first place and leverage it to apply in other areas of their life.
Okay.
And so it allows them to play at a championship level in all areas.
Have you read the book Underdog Advantage?
I have not yet, but
Dude,
I will.
That's a book. I mean, and the reason I think about this is because that's exactly what he talks about. He's like, in the beginning, I was this fucking underdog and I hustled and I grinded. And then there came a point where I was no longer the underdog.
Right.
And he's like, how do I channel that same grind and hustle from when I was the underdog and I had nothing to lose and I would take on, the challenges with this nothing to lose mentality, how do I channel that to the point where I do have a whole lot to fucking lose today?
Right.
And so it's a really good book, by the way.
Well, and I'll definitely check it out. Maybe I'll steal it off your back shelf.
Well, if it's back there, somebody's already got it. You're beat.
All right.
Sorry, bro. You have to buy it
But you
yourself.
look at like a lot of times that first entrepreneurship journey to success is win at all costs, right?
Yeah.
And like at all costs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think when you get a level of success, you get to the point where you're like, I want to bring people along with me. Bring the family, like it becomes a mission, right? Like and like a lot of the people I work with are like, I will not go on another journey. Like I have to climb another mountain.
Yes, 100%.
I just, and that's me too. Like I can't stop, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, and to your point, that I took my family with me.
But you have to bring the next level is bring the family
cousin,
with
my
you.
brother, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, all working in that.
Well, but you even look at like it's the wife and kids too, right? Like they can't be left behind either, because then it's always this tension point of what's more important. What do I choose?
Yep.
Like you need life is about true fulfillment, not just about making money and success.
100%. Yeah.
And so if you have the impact, you have the money, you have the family with you, and you can bring as many people along with you as possible, like that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
And you never have to stop at that point in time.
Yeah, Gary Vee talks about it, man, and he's like, if you're doing what the fuck you want to do today, you've won. You've just won. Like, if you're doing what you want to do, you've won already.
Right.
Like, and what the fuck is there to complain about? You know what I mean? At that point. So no, but you're right, because it's interesting you say that about the family, because I did do a lot of this, and I don't want to say without them, because damn, I could not have done it without them. But they also like weren't in the passenger seat on the trips back and forth to the plate, so I'm getting, and as a result, I kind of compartmentalize my life a little bit. So as you guys see, I'm like, Heather's coming with me to more things. She's getting more involved with the things that I'm doing. My kids, like, we're getting much more involved with the things that we want to do together. You know what I mean? And so you're right. I did kind of create a degree of separation as I grew my first business. And I'm trying to correct that now.
Well, and all it creates is tension, right? Because you don't want your wife sitting there thinking like you're choosing the mission over me.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Because so they got to be part of it.
Yep. Yeah, you're so right, dude. Because I would travel, and she's like, "Can I go?" I'm like, "Absolutely, you can go." And she's like, "I can't go." I'm like, right? Because she had her own shit, and so as a result, I'd be traveling, she'd be doing her stuff, and it was just creating too much space.
For sure.
So now, like, I'm like, all right, let's make it so you can come.
But the key point is like you're never going to stop. I'm never going to stop. Like
Never.
we have to have
Never
another
going to
mountain
stop.
to climb. And but we have to own that within ourselves, because otherwise we may hold ourselves back from what we have to do in the world to make other people happy.
Right.
And no matter who that is, we've got to pursue that mission.
Do you think, and just let me, like, do you think, obviously, like, we teach and we train, like, listen, you got to have this why, it's got to fuel you, and you got to, like, really, be clear about that to grind forward. Do you think, like, just as underdogs, like, we have this drive to just keep going anyway?
I think that we have a tough cycle in us where it's like we've got to overcome, we've got to master, we've got to different things. But one of the pivots in my career is moving on from the underdog mentality to the how do I win on purpose, right? And so one of my mentors taught me a bunch of good strategies. This is a really cool one. So I ask myself very consistently, what am I capable of 6 months ago or today that I wasn't 6 months ago? And I ask myself that very purposely to see growth from that point to this point. And so when I look back, I can be like, oh, I can do this today that I couldn't 6 months ago. I did these things to get here on purpose. Well, if I purposely got to this point, what can I purposely do to get to the next point? So it's for emotional momentum, because there's two ways we can determine how we feel about it, this moment, right? Either I should be there, or I used to be there and I'm glad I got here. And it changes so it's just an emotional momentum strategy, so that I don't have to go back in my closet and be like, oh, the world's against me, I got to force my way to it. I can be like, no, I can feel amazing about where I'm at, and I can use that and everything I've built and leverage it to grow on purpose. And it's a positive flywheel at that point in time.
So let's talk about Unleash a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me how you got involved with Unleash, and like how this fits into like how it complements what you're doing already.
Right. So Mike and I actually just connected through Facebook, right? And we had just
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple, right? Like I'm sure I was targeted at something.
After you hear him tell his stories from stage,
exactly.
right?
I'm sure that they marketed directly to me. And what it was is we just basically were commenting on each other's stuff. And we'd message and things like that. I think we even got somebody to be like, hey man, I love your guys' bro love for each other. You just are out there because we're like, I love you, right? And all of a sudden I was like, hey, we should probably get on a call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's just, so we got on a Zoom call and it ended up being way over an hour, but all we did is talk about our daughters.
Somebody
right?
must have the pro account then.
Right. Pro account, baby. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead, dude.
But honestly,
about your daughters.
like we talked like for 5 minutes about business and we talked for like an hour or so about our daughters. And so just because we're very family men, like we are dads, right? First. And so from there, it was like, cool. Yeah. And then we jumped on another phone call or a Zoom call. And then we finally got into like, what are we actually doing? Right. And so he's like, oh, like, I love what you're doing. I love why you're doing it. And I was like, oh, I love what you're doing. I love why you're doing it. And he's like, hey, let's explore an opportunity.
Hell yeah.
And so then that's what led to me coming out to Delaware for the mastermind retreat for the first time.
Oh, was that the first one, the one that we met at?
No, I was the one before you.
Okay.
And so like coming in and being able to talk about wealth building, being able to talk about access to wealth.
That's really cool, man. I feel like there's so many people that close those doors because they think that there's some kind of conflict, right? Like, oh, he might grab a client that I could have grabbed before I can grab them.
Right.
Like, what? Like, first of all, my understanding, you teach a way different thing, right? Especially like the financial side of things. But when you connect with like-minded people, there's this synergy that gets created that people just don't realize, right? Like you end up, like I'm telling you, as a roofing company, right? Like one of my best friends is a roofer. He's been on my podcast. Like we completely overlap areas that we do work in, but we created a synergy with each other. Like I can literally walk into his office and half the staff will stop and say hello to me. And I'm a competitor. Right. So like when people crack me up with this idea of like just this mindset of scarcity versus the mindset of abundance, like, listen, you can create synergy with a competitor and build. I call it co-opetition.
Right.
Not competition.
Right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, and it just comes from the mindset of like, there's enough success for everybody in this world. Right.
And there's damn sure enough roofs for us, right?
Absolutely, right.
And that's it. And whatever your thing is, right? Like whatever your, what do they call it? The little, damn, I can't even talk right now.
But you asked me another question about why does it align?
Oh yeah.
And so the reason it aligns is because everybody on our team is just a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
And we're impact oriented first, right? Like from Mike to AJ to Margaret to Ev to Alex, everybody, right? They are so about making a difference in the world, about mission, it's not about money specifically. Like that's an inevitable.
Absolutely.
Money's an inevitable byproduct of doing the right things.
Yeah.
The right things for the right things, right?
That's right.
And so like my heart fits with them. Their heart fits with how I see the world. And I'm huge on collaboration. And so when you get a chance to work with an amazing group of people like that, I mean, if anyone hasn't experienced it, come to an event. Like it will blow your mind, right? Like just come and crazy. Experience it, right?
Me and my wife both were like, holy smokes, like this is community. Like this is, she's like, are we in a cult? I'm like, I don't think so, babe. I don't think so. But
right.
like Mike on the on my podcast, he was like, well, cult is just simply part of culture.
Right.
And I was like, all right, Mike, I'm keeping an eye on you, bro.
Right.
But no, it's so crazy how like tight everybody is, how supportive everyone is for one another. It is bizarre, man.
Right.
It's so cool.
Well, and so like one of the things I think about in collaboration is there's 3 things I really need. I need to work with amazing people. I need to have impact on the world that makes the world a better place. And I need to have an economic opportunity that can create the life that I can see.
Sure.
And so if those things check those boxes, you know what I mean? And they are amazing people who I love collaborating with, and we have a similar mission to change the world. And so it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I love it. I'm having a blast with it. But I'm having so much more fun learning through it. You know what I mean? Just from the people, man. Even Adam, shout out to Adam Latin, man. I sat down with this guy, me and Heather, and like 10 minutes into the conversation, I'm like, holy smokes. Like I couldn't believe all that we picked up in 10 minutes of talking to that guy.
Right.
So it's crazy how like there's these gems within the community there that are some of the best kept secrets, honestly.
For sure. That are unearthed through the Unleash You Know process.
Yeah. So, all right, we could chat all day, dude. We can't.
Okay.
So let's make sure that people know how to contact you, how to follow you, how to stay in contact with you.
So I'll give you all of my contact information, and I'll even make an offer. Like if any one of your listeners wants a free intro call to a financial planning session, I'll give that to them because they're your listeners. So,
okay.
But yeah, Facebook, and I can give you all my details, everything like that. So
Yeah, well, go ahead, because this is audio, so go ahead
perfect,
and put it out there so they can follow you there.
Yeah, so it's just facebook.com/Coe, Sean, Coesean is the easiest way. I do have a Calendly link, Sean Coe, and you can always book a call there. But yeah, I'm around.
Awesome, man. One thing that we ask everybody before we close the show, can you tell us one time in your life where going the extra mile, like going above and beyond what the norm was, really changed your life and took your life, just had a significant impact on your life?
Oh, there's so many times, right? Yeah. But I would probably just, I don't even know one to pick, but so we'll just pick with my daughters, right?
Okay.
Because there are times as a father, I'm like, man, I'm tired, right? I don't want to. I'll give you this example. So with Kaylee, we get along smashingly, right? Like there's no, like we don't argue, nothing, right? Except for about 6 months when she was 12, right? And I was like, oh man, I don't even know what to do. And I realized that I was parenting her the wrong way. I was parenting her as if she was 17. So that realization was huge for me.
And what do you mean by that?
Was like I was parenting her like I thought she could be, as opposed to where she was and one step further. And so I would be like, all my expectations and everything would come towards 17 rather than 12 plus, right? Because we wouldn't ever leave them at the same place. I want to parent one degree more. And so like that changed the perspective. The fighting stopped. But I went the extra degree and I went and apologized to her for it. I was like, hey, babe, I have for the last 6 months been a terrible father to you. I have been doing this. I have been unfair to you. I have been putting undue expectations on you. And that extra mile of apologizing to my 12-year-old changed her life. Because now she's able to see a model of self-evaluation. But what it's done is it's changed our relationship. She can now look at me and be like, Dad, you're in that zone. And I can be like, oh, it's time to pull back. So I never have to experience the 6 months again, because we developed a language based on me going to apologize. And that wasn't to brag about me. That's just the best example I can think of that.
Bro, best example. That's probably one of the best answers we've had to that question. What do you think, Brandon? Yeah, so great answer, my friend. All right, guys, go follow this man. Make sure that you guys tune in, hit the like, subscribe button on all those forums, pages, places, wherever we put this. Make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to have awesome guests just like Sean every single time from this point forward and from the moment that we started this podcast, right? We're just going to keep bringing you guys high caliber guests.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you being here, my friend.
All right.
Your success is on the other side of your comfort zone. See, that's the difference between me and those other guys. I wanted it more than they did. I wanted it enough to get uncomfortable. I wanted it enough to go the extra mile. Do you want it bad enough? Do you want it bad enough to go the extra mile?